Yeah, just try it.
Move to the center of the exhibit. Over here, buddy. What's happening here?
The cute picture.
Holy sons of Notre Dame, sing her glory, celebrate, raise her golden blue and cheer. This isn't the same words. We will fight and
It's just not the chorus.
strong out of heart and true. We will never break. We'll cheer her.
It is a little bit
To Notre Dame. Oh, there we go. Cheer, cheer for old
Sing it, Kaden.
Notre Dame. Wake up the echoes cheering her name. You're supposed to say this stuff. It's a prompter. You're supposed to say this. You're supposed to read it. And we have some special guests with us today to help us make. He can't read.
Hi, Reese. It's going to be a great game day. We're looking forward to big plays and high scores.
Yeah, go look up.
I've never seen so many fans as we see right now. This building is on fire.
They know who's going to win.
Look up!
This is a strong matchup. But we're picking Texas.
Lead chorus always on there.
Special thanks to our guest members
Oh, yeah. You want to do it with them?
You're running for Notre Dame.
We just do run in place.
Let's warm up.
Stretch your arms, Kaden.
Alright, everyone's ready? Warm up, stretch legs. Alright. Practice. Step as fast as you can. That's how you run? I think you have to stay back here on the pad.
Okay, get ready.
Stay on the pad, buddy.
Okay, go.
I know, it's hard to run it. Maybe hold the same. Might have to be on the
Yeah, get on the pad, bud.
Go there.
Step on the pad.
You want to go barefoot.
Stay on the pad, stay on the pad. Kaden, stay on the pad. Kaden, keep going. What is that? Is that how you run? Keep going. You're still going. You got to get all the way. You're trying to get to the end. Oh my goodness. One. One jump, Kaden. Okay, now on the count of three, jump as high as you can once. As high as you can. Okay, let's see if I can beat you.
The 1926 rival college football powerhouses share rich history with their combined national championship and Heisman Trophy winners. Notre Dame leads the series 49-37 with 5 ties. The Irish forced 5 USC turnovers in 2023 game, winning 48-20. Notre Dame safety Xavier Watts had 2 interceptions, returned a fumble for a touchdown in the game.
exciting season ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing Patrice O. Originally aiming for financial success, Patrice refocused her passion on football. Her coach in weights and devouring barbecue burgers. Her practice stats are record-breaking, setting the bar high.
Good try.
However, her road won't be easy, facing tough defenses. Coach dubbed him Pepperjack Pistons for his vigorous energy. His unique training regime includes lifting weights, bats, and practice, promise an exciting future. The main challenge is practice.
That's
Coach
good.
passion for dictator, thankfulness, thunder, highlighting the positive attitude. No training hot wings or lifting weights during training, Marcella's record-breaking practice stats are stunning. As she has not living confident herself is
Look at that speed.
Presenter I'm sure you met is Jim LaFave. Jim is an award-winning journalist, author, speaker, and sports historian with a specialty in college football. I'm also told he's sent most of his money to the university for his children to go there. We really appreciate that, so keep buying those books. Jim is a premier Notre Dame football historian, especially.
And thanks to the Notre Dame Club of Atlanta for cooperating so wonderfully with the Newt Rockne Memorial Society to bring this event to you today. It's our great privilege to be part of this and to celebrate this iconic game and season, but particularly the events of October 18th, 1924. Now, the events of that day really bring together a confluence of three major forces for America at the time. First of all, the U.S. military, as represented by the football team from West Point. These fellows were widely regarded and respected. They were men. And let me tell you a little bit about the way the rules worked back then. You could attend college anywhere in America and play 4 years of football at that college, and then get an appointment to the U.S. Military Academy. So some of these fellows were playing their 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th seasons of football. And like I say, they were grown men. They were a formidable force. The second would be the Catholic Church in America, as represented by the University of Notre Dame, which already was becoming a major factor, a major center, a place of honor and respect among American Catholics. And a large part of that influence came through Newt Rockne's football team. Going from coast to coast, playing anybody, anywhere, that was a major part of it too. The third force in this confluence was the metropolis of New York City. I mean, growing as no other city in the country and having a tremendous effect, especially as a center of media and culture. And we'll get into that media just a little bit later. I first want to start out by introducing some special guests. Show of hands, how many of you have been to a football game at Notre Dame Stadium? Okay, that's what I would expect. Now, on your trip to South Bend, how many of you have visited the unique and awesome part memorabilia shop, part museum known as Augie's Locker Room? Okay. All right. The rest of you have some catching up to do. It's at a great location on Ironwood, just off of South Bend Avenue. But we have with us today the proprietor of said shop, co-founder of the Newt Rockney Memorial Society, and winner of the 2023 Rockney Heritage Award, Mr. Jim Augie Augustine. Now, two other gentlemen here will get their introductions just a little bit later. But we are graced with the presence, or are supposed to be, of relatives of Don Miller. They just walked through the door. They just walked through the door. The grandson of Don Miller, by the name of Don Behringer, his wife Karen, and do we have the youngster with us? We do. The great grandson of Don Miller, the wonderfully named Miller O'Shaughnessy. I'm not making it up. With us today. Welcome, welcome. Your seats are waiting for you in the front row. It is fabulous that we have representation from the family. Everything, of course, revolves around Rockney. The Army series starts in 1913 when 18 Notre Dame football players and 13 pair of cleats made their way to West Point for the first game. And between quarterback Gus DeRay and end Newt Rockney, flinging passes, using the forward pass as never before, was the game that changed football. Rockney takes over as head coach in 1918 when the game wasn't played due to the Great War, but in the 12 years after that, he was the head coach when Notre Dame took on Army. Had tremendous respect. He would stay often afterwards at West Point and just discuss the game of football with his counterparts at the academy. Let's take a closer look at the four gentlemen in question. At the left, Don Miller, one of 5 football playing brothers from Defiance, Ohio. All came to Notre Dame, all played football. He was the youngest and the most achieved of the 5. They all got their degrees in law within 4 years at Notre Dame and had great careers in law and politics in Ohio. He went a little further as a respected federal judge, Don Miller. Next up is little Harry Stuhldreher, the quarterback from Massillon, Ohio, 5'7", 151 pounds. It's incredible to even imagine. He was the major general, you might say, on the field. I mean, back then, you couldn't call plays in from the sideline. Substitution was severely limited by law. You had to have a quarterback who knew what he was doing and could make the right call. But amazingly, in addition to that, he was considered the best blocker coming out of the backfield. Incredible, given his size. The next is my favorite, Jim Crowley, because we hail from the same hometown of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Known a little bit for football. And I grew up at St. John the Evangelist School, learning to play sports on the exact same field that Jim Crowley had 50 years earlier. And he was just an all-around outstanding athlete. Played on the early Notre Dame hockey team. I loved that as a hockey person myself. And he went on a fabulous coaching career at Michigan State, and then a much better job, Fordham University in New York City. And at Fordham, he coached a young fellow by the name of Vincent T. Lombardi. So that's some of his claim to fame. And on the right is Elmer Layden, the big guy, the fullback. 161 pounds. I'm not making it up. Rockney at one point, the newspapermen were challenging him. These guys can't possibly be as small as you're advertising them. And he brought the New York media out to a grain scale in New Jersey and had them one by one get up and weighed, and that's truly the case. The two gentlemen on the right have the distinction of both being professional football commissioners at the same time. How did that happen? Elmer Layden, after coaching Notre Dame for 7 years in 1941, got named the first full-time commissioner of the NFL. And a couple of years later, the rival All-American Football Conference was started, and they hired Jim Crowley to be their commissioner. So these guys were quite accomplished in the rest of their lives. But of course, they weren't the whole team. You had the 7 mules in front of them. And the center and captain of the 7 mules is Adam Walsh, who came from Hollywood, California. His family had moved from Iowa out there to run a general store, basically a grocery store. So he grew up delivering groceries to the early silent film stars like Douglas Fairbanks and the like. Very interesting life. And on the far right of the photo, making him the left end, is Chuck Collins from Oak Park, Illinois. And if you take a close look at his right hand, how many digits do we count? 4. In a high school game for De La Salle Institute in Chicago, his foot got stepped on by a football cleat, got infected, and got amputated. These were tough guys. During this famous season, a vote was taken. Who's more important to the success of the team, the mules or the horsemen? The mules won 7-4. Here is the entirety of the campus back in 1924. That's it. It's about 8 buildings and Cartier Field, kind of rickety wooden bleachers that they cobbled together and sort of added on to from here to there. But it was not a shrine of college football at the time. By 24, Rockne was already advocating we have to build a real stadium here. But it took years of convincing the Holy Cross Fathers, and getting the support of the South Bend business community was a big part of it. But that was one of Rockne's vision. Rockne was visionary in many ways. I always say he changed how football was played, coached, viewed, promoted, covered by the media. He became part of the media himself. But one of the things he did was he foreshadowed the role of what we today call a sports information director for a college athletic department. And what he did was each year he selected a student to be the student publicity manager. And his role was to be around the team at all times, travel with the team, file reports with the South Bend newspapers, cover the away games and send reports back, and also hang around the big newspaper men of the time to find out what the scuttlebutt was, what they were talking about. And so in 1924, that role fell to a sophomore from South Bend by the name of George Strickler, and we will cover his part of the story just a little bit later. But right now, we want to turn our attention over to Army West Point, and we're going to start with a wonderful video that was prepared for this event today. Enjoy.
The Army football program is fortunate to be part of several important rivalries, and the matchups with Notre Dame hold a special place in the annals of the sport. From the team's first meeting on the plain at West Point in 1913, to matchups at Yankee Stadium as part of Army's back-to-back national championships, followed by the game of the century when the Black Knights and Fighting Irish split the national title, to neutral site games in the new millennium, Army and Notre Dame share a common thread among the most storied programs in all of college football. Following that first meeting 111 years ago, in which Notre Dame was credited with revolutionizing the forward pass, the rivalry steadily built to the point where it was the biggest game on the Fighting Irish's schedule, and for Army, an annual game that was second only to Army-Navy. The matchups with Notre Dame fueled Army's national championship teams of the 1940s. The Black Knights, behind Heisman Trophy winners Doc Blanchard and Glenn Davis, defeated the Fighting Irish by a combined 107-0 in 1944 and 1945, during which Army was consensus national champions. In 1946, in a game built as the biggest in the history of college football, a 0-0 tie was the only blemish in Army's 32-game unbeaten streak, with both squads staking a claim to the national title. In 1958, Army visited Notre Dame in a top 5 matchup, which served as one of the signature games of Pete Dawkins' Heisman Trophy winning season. while All-American Bob Novogratz registered 18 tackles and 2 fumble recoveries in a 14-2 victory as the Black Knights went on to finish the season undefeated. In recent years, Army and Notre Dame have met at neutral sites and in South Bend, always drawing attention and pageantry as one of the great rivalries in all of college football.
And at this time, we're going to take a deeper dive into Army West Point football. And we're going to call up an individual who has played in the series 2010 in the brand new Yankee Stadium at the time, Army Notre Dame. This gentleman was the starting center for the Black Knights in 2009 and 2010. He graduated with a BS in leadership and went on to a master's degree in global and international studies from the University of Kansas. His military service would take up the rest of this program, is how detailed it is. 4 deployments to Afghanistan, 1 to Kosovo, and just a tremendous record of service to our country. And we are very pleased to have with us today, traveling from West Point for this event, although he is a native of the Atlanta area, so there's a little bit of a homecoming too. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Major Zach Peterson.
Thanks, Jim. Good afternoon. I am Major Zach Peterson from Sharpsburg, Georgia, about 45 minutes down the road. That's where I grew up. So I am a native of the state and intimately familiar with Atlanta. I'm honored to be here on behalf of the United States Military Academy, the Army West Point Athletic Department, and the Army football team. It really is an honor. I'm extremely thankful to the College Football Hall of Fame for this event. I've been here several times, and it always continues to impress me each and every time I come, just with how first class it is. It holds a special place in my heart, as it not only honors college football in general, but it also houses the original Commanders-in-Chief trophy, which currently resides at West Point, New York, and it has for the last 7 years. And we continue to look to do that. College football was the avenue that led me to play at West Point, and ultimately become a West Point graduate and now serve as a field artillery officer. I'm actually a 4th generation field artillery officer. My great-grandfather was a fire support officer in World War I. My grandfather was a battery commander in World War II, and my father also served, didn't deploy, but was an airborne ranger who did a lot of cool things, and now I've been able to follow in that legacy. So Army football put me on that trajectory. The lessons I learned playing football for Army have become my professional foundation for how I've navigated my life. It really is like an internal compass when I think about the ability to handle pressure, the ability to work together with a team of people towards a common objective, and ultimately navigate life. You know, not only as an officer, but as a father to my son. So I owe college football and my experience at West Point all the credit there. And really, when you think about college football, not only for Army, but Notre Dame, it is a life-changing opportunity, and it's a strategic influencer in our country. It's that important. As a player at Army, I was blessed with the opportunity to be a part of the Army Notre Dame rivalry in 2010, where we played the first college football game against each other in the new Yankee Stadium, and that was during my senior year. As Jim said, I was a starter on that team at center, and I can still remember snapping the ball and engaging Manti Te'o from Notre Dame. He was a freshman at the time, and I was a senior, and I knew he was going to be a good player, just because I was 5 years older than him at the time. He was out there making a lot of plays. So, physical game, very much respect on both sides. As we both teams played extremely hard for their brand, and in that venue. The venue in the Bronx was amazing. It was an electric atmosphere, and really it relived some of the great traditions that we just saw on that video that are associated with the Army-Notre Dame rivalry. Despite not winning that game with Notre Dame, that season ended up being a really good season for Army. We ended up winning the Armed Forces Bowl later on that year against SMU, which became our first bowl win since 1985. Yeah, so it was an excellent way to finish my career as a college football player. And then that game against Notre Dame in the new Yankee Stadium was a special memory during that season. As I've now come back into college football in a new role on the Army West Point football staff, I've begun to feel that same excitement and anticipation to be a part of this 2024 game against Notre Dame that's back at Yankee Stadium. So I'm having a lot of memories resurface as we got ready to play them, 14 years ago. And in my new role, I'm the admissions support director for the staff. So that's my primary function as I work to bring in the next generation of Army football players. But I also serve as a mentor to our current players and our soon-to-be second lieutenant graduates. The excitement and anticipation this year are amplified on an even greater level as both Army and Notre Dame are ranked in the top 25. So I think that adds another level of. So I'm confident this year's game is going to be a great battle that will be reminiscent, hopefully, of some of those games in the 1940s as two prestigious schools face off against each other very soon. So it will surely add another elite chapter to the rivalry, and I can't wait for the 23rd of November. And in the meantime, be Navy.
Thank you, Major Peterson. Thank you for your service. And a very important role in keeping the flow of outstanding student athletes at the Academy. Okay, so we're stepping back into the meeting in 1924. Here's the fellow who wrote a few words. It is impossible to put into today's context because we don't have any single media figure with the kind of influence that Grantland Rice had at the time. His sports column was syndicated in over 100 papers across the country, totaling more than 10 million in readership. That's how big newspapers were back then. But everybody read Rice, everybody, he created a common vernacular for sports across the country and certainly played a huge role in getting Notre Dame football well known across the country. People could follow it without ever having been to a game at South Bend, obviously. But the game against Army in 1924 was huge. And the venue was the Polo Grounds, again, primarily for baseball, the home of the New York Baseball Giants, and in fact had hosted a World Series game literally just days before the Army Notre Dame football game, when the Giants took on the Washington Senators. And here is the program cover for that day.
Wow.
The captain of Army, Ed Garvish, again, was playing in his 8th year of college football. He had played Notre Dame in 1917 as a freshman at Washington Jefferson College. in Pennsylvania, and he was just a stout, all-around, outstanding fellow. Headed to a great career. And Notre Dame had the great Adam Walsh. Adam Walsh, it was said, played much of the Army game that day with broken bones in both hands. An amazing competitor. Great pageantry, even back then. And, you got to figure, these two schools, it wasn't like either of them had a huge alumni base that was attending this game. These were fans from the New York area that had gathered. So here we are, in the same hour. At 10 minutes after 2, as many in the huge crowd were settling into their seats, the ceremony began. From deep in center field, at the east or open end of the horseshoe, the huge gates slowly opened. To the roar of the crowd, in marched the West Point Band. They played grand marches as they led the Corps of Cadets onto the field. Column after column of gray-clad cadets entered the stadium, and they made an immediate right flank and continued to march along the north stands. The long gray line marched with crisp precision, their arms swinging in seemingly effortless unison. Toward the west end, they spread and then turned and paraded along the end zone behind the goalpost. Another left flank march, and they continued to their destination at the midpoint of the South Grandstand. All along the route, the 1,200 cadets were greeted by loud, sustained cheering. A fabulous scene, setting the stage for a really outstanding football game. And you look at the score, and it's a low-scoring 13-7 affair, but that's not. Football wasn't about scoring back then. It's about ball control. A long drive where you kept the ball was a huge success, whether you made it into the end zone or not. So when people read about this game and then are surprised to see the score was only 13-7, well, it's a terrific battle. And in the end, Notre Dame prevails. But it was at halftime that one of the more important things happened. And that was when the Grantland Rice and the other major sports writers were discussing the first half and how impressed they were with the way Notre Dame controlled things. And into this conclave strolled young George Strickler, Rockney's publicist and South Bend correspondent. Now, earlier in the week, as a student at Notre Dame, he had attended at Washington Hall, Brother Andre would show movies, not necessarily first run, but popular movies of the time. And that week they showed the great Rudolph Valentino, the #1 star of the silent films in America at the time, in the film Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So that was on his mind as he strolled into this group of big-time newspaper reporters. Part of Strickler's assignment from Rockney was to keep an ear open for scuttlebutt and an analysis from the big guys in the newspaper business. The conversation revolved around the exceptional work of Notre Dame's backfield in thwarting Army at every turn. Yeah, just like the Four Horsemen, Strickler piped up, recalling Wednesday's movie. No reaction was noted from among the professional scribes. The confab eventually broke up as folks settled into place for the second half. And quite a second half it was. Back and forth. Notre Dame finally prevails by a score of 13-7. And after the game, you have Grantland Rice in the evening twilight and gathering chill sat at his typewriter in the Polo Grounds press box and pondered his opening. National readers of his Sportlight column were used to Rice's poems, odes, and flowery speech. He regularly made an effort to liven the mundane with a clever turn of the phrase. He was well read in classical literature, having majored in Greek and Latin at Vanderbilt. Something about Strickler's halftime comment and the imagery of horses stuck in Rice's mind. When he reflected on the Notre Dame backfield, he recalled the 1923 game at Ebbets Field, which he took in from field level. At one point, he recalled the charge of the players on an out-of-bounds play brought to mind the possibility of being trampled by a team of runaway horses. It all clicked. His fingers hit the typewriter keys. Outlined against the blue-gray October sky, the Four Horsemen rode again. in dramatic lore. They are known as famine, pestilence, destruction, and death. These are only aliases. Their real names are Stuhlgreier, Miller, Crowley, and Layden. They formed the crest of the South Bend Cyclone, before which another fighting Army football team was swept over the precipice at the Polo Grounds yesterday as 55,000 spectators peered down on the bewildering panorama spread on the green plain below. A cyclone can't be snared. It may be surrounded, but somewhere it breaks through to keep on going. When the cyclone starts from South Bend, where the candlelight still gleam through the Indiana sycamores, those in the way must take to storm cellars at top speed. Yesterday, the cyclone struck again as Notre Dame beat the Army 13-7 with a set of backfield stars that zipped and crashed through a strong Army defense with more speed and power than the warring cadets could meet. So there it was throughout the whole country to see, and we'll take up in just a few minutes the rest of the story, as they say. But right now we want to get some perspective on what it's like to play football at Notre Dame. And this gentleman also had the honor of playing in the Notre Dame Army Series in his senior year in Old Yankee Stadium in 1969. This gentleman came out of a great high school program at Cathedral Prep in Erie, Pennsylvania. And at defensive tackle in 1969 was unanimous All-American for Notre Dame. He was the second player chosen in the 1970 NFL draft by my Green Bay Packers. And spent 11 years playing in the NFL. Today he is still active, goes around the country speaking to school-age children with a message of hope and inspiration and achievement. And I also need to mention he is the 2021 winner of the Rockney Inspiration Award. Please help me welcome Mr. Mike McCoy.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's an honor and privilege to be with you today, and especially in front of you, Major Peterson. And great to get to know you a little bit and your background, and played in that great Notre Dame Army game and 10 years after me. Actually, I was at the 1924. I was actually at the 1924 game, and you guys saw me in the Polo Grounds. You know, my journey started back in Erie, Pennsylvania. When I was in 5th grade, my two favorite foods were Twinkies and milkshakes. I was 5'5", 165-pound fat kid, and lived with my grandparents, and our family lived with my grandparents. My dad made some bad decisions, but you know, my family, my faith, and Father Peterson and her father Tellers, and St. John the Baptist Grade School, and my Polish family, just because my mother's maiden name was Spanaga, so that was really helping me during that time. But I couldn't even play football because I was overweight. And I remember my mother telling me, says, Michał, which is a Polish name for Michael, she goes, don't sit on your friends' tricycles because you'll break them. I didn't understand that. And I got a little bit bigger and thinned out a little bit and played a little baseball and basketball and when I was in middle school, and then I decided to become a priest. And I left home in 8th grade and went up to St. Mark's Seminary in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I was up there for a year, and I played sports up there, and it didn't work out, so I came back to Cathedral Prep High School. And that's really, the journey always starts, but it was there that a coach named Tony Zambrowski, who was a graduate of Cathedral Prep and played for Frank Leahy in the 50s, in the late 50s, and probably the early 50s, late 50s. And he was on some of those national championship teams, and he came back to Cathedral Prep High School and gave 50 years of his life to that school, and he grabbed a hold of me. And went out for football in my sophomore year. It was the first time I ever played football. And so I started to play football, and then he said, you got to wrestle. I said, wrestle? I said, what's that? And he said, come on out, and it's going to help you play football. So I went out for wrestling, and I came back my junior year, and I was a totally different player, and more aggressive, more stronger, and I went both ways. And then he asked me this question, he says, where do you want to go to college? I said, college? I said, what are you talking about? College. I mean, I had nothing, I had no idea that I was going to go to college, and that just wasn't part of my family structure at that time back then. And I said, I really don't know. He goes, how about Notre Dame? And I said, where's that? And I'm serious, because you got to remember, this is back in the early 60s. I graduated high school in 66, so I was on the national championship team in 66. And I heard about Notre Dame, and I knew about Notre Dame, but it wasn't such a big thing in my life because I was heading down the path of the priesthood. And so I got to know and understand a little bit about Notre Dame through my high school football coach, Tony Zambrowski, and he and his wife Marion took me out to a spring game my junior year, and it was an unofficial visit, and that's when I first met Eric Garcia. And I said, wow, what a class act. And I knew right away what kind of person he was. And I saw the campus, and it was like 5,000 guys. And you could walk from 20 minutes from campus to campus, around the campus. And actually, that old picture from the 1924 shot of the University of Notre Dame, Walsh Hall was there. That was my senior year hall, was Walsh Hall. And that was pretty special, living in Walsh Hall my senior year. And then they converted it to a women's dorm. Of course, the ladies were allowed to come to Notre Dame. It's been very good for the university, I think, because my daughter went there for a while. And so I followed my coach's instructions and did what he told me to do. And I had great teachers at Cathedral Prep High School. And I went out to Notre Dame. And, the first thing they did for us back then, we went to the law school library and they showed us Notre Dame All-American with Ronald Reagan. And that was our introduction to Notre Dame. And so that started to give me a little flavor of what Notre Dame's all about. And visited Penn State and visited Indiana University. Didn't even come close to what I wanted for my life and the atmosphere I wanted to be in at the University of Notre Dame. And went out there and my freshman year we did win a national championship. And we had a scrimmage against the #1 defense. And there was Page, Alan Page, Kevin Hardy, Pete Dranko, Jim Lynch, Tom Rhodes, O'Leary, Smithberger, Pergine. We had a scrimmage against them. And my first scrimmage against them as a freshman team, I came back and I had 4 stitches underneath my eye, and I got into that payphone and put that quarter in and made a tight call to my high school football coach. He said, "What have you got me into?" Even though I came from Cathedral Prep High School, academics and athletics, Monsignor McDonald, but it was just a whole different level. He says, "Hang in there, don't give up." And I listened to his words, and I didn't give up. And that's part of one of the reasons I'm standing here today, let alone my faith and my family. And so we had a chance to play. We played the freshman team at Michigan State the night before the 10-10 tie. And we went up there on the train with them, and Vic Eddy came off the platform and separated his shoulder, so he was not able to play in that game, our great running back. And so we played the freshman team the night before at a high school football field, and there was 20,000 people at that game. And it was just packed. And we beat them with a last-second field goal, 32-28. And was there, oh my goodness, that's me. Okay. Sarah, why is everybody staring at that young guy up there? I don't know. And we came down, we're on the sideline for that 10-10 tie. And then just the history of Notre Dame and just playing for Era and having that chance to play in the Cotton Bowl my senior year. First time we went to a bowl game in 45 years. And we went down there, and I think about the game a lot. And my senior year, we had a big 33 game in Pennsylvania. We played the All-Stars from Texas. And a lot of those guys from that high school All-Star game were playing by that senior year. They were undefeated, and we were 9-1-1. And unfortunately, we lost that game in the last seconds. And did Cotton Spire catch that pass? Who knows? We didn't have instant replay back then. Got it on the 4-yard line. But you have to give Texas credit because they did go fourth down twice on that drive and made it by inches, or else the game would have been over. So you do have to give them credit. And who was the gentleman who had the cancer was on the sideline? They made a movie about him. Who was that? No, the guy who had leg cancer, had a leg amputated.
Piccolo.
Huh?
Piccolo?
No, Piccolo. Man, you guys are. This University of Texas. They actually have a movie about him called All American. But he had cancer and his leg was amputated. He was on the sideline for that game, and that was a pretty special time playing against the University of Texas. And then just the whole atmosphere of Notre Dame and going back to this game in 1924. Of course, I learned more about it when I was at the University of Notre Dame, what it was all about. And then my senior year, I had the privilege of playing Army at Yankee Stadium, in the old Yankee Stadium. And it was in the same locker room that Babe Ruth was at. And coming out there and being part of that pageantry and playing against them. And, the score was 45-7. I'm sorry, Major. But we did win that game. And I did get the game ball. I'm sorry about that. And I did block 2 punts, so I'm sorry about that. And you're never going to talk to me again. But great, my daughter, my son-in-law is 82nd Airborne. He had 20 years in the Army. My daughter's an ICU nurse in the Army, so my uncle Eddie Spry was a B-15 bombardier in World War II. Yeah, so he came back. A lot of those guys didn't come back, unfortunately. And so playing that game was very historical and understanding the grandma rice and having that chance. And one of the guys I played against, I met him when I was the age 45. And I was here in Atlanta, my hip was going bad, I had every joint replaced. And this right hip done twice, so my first hip was age 45, and I heard about this doctor, Dr. Bill Roden at Kennesaw. He was a pretty good doctor. So I went and visited him, and he looked at me at first and said, "Do you remember me?" Man, when people say that, I don't say anything. I said, "No, doc," because I played against you. I said,
Army game was only the third game of 1924. So the team got back to South Bend, and oh, by the way, some stories will tell you that George Strickler organized the famous photo on that Monday. No, that didn't happen immediately. It happened sometime later. The team was only back in at Notre Dame for 3 days. The very next week they played at Princeton, and the Holy Cross Fathers would not allow the team to make it one trip and stay in the New York City area. They had them come back by train on Sunday to go to class for 3 days, to turn around Thursday and go back out to Princeton. Now Princeton, you think today, well, was that a big? It was a huge game. It was a huge to get a game. They were just 2 years removed from their latest of many national championships, 1922. It was a huge deal to get a game at Princeton. And Notre Dame prevails 12-0. So, but somewhere in this 2-week period, George Strickler rounds up 4 workhorses from a coal and ice delivery company in downtown South Bend and coaxes them out to Cartier Field. Gets the 4 backfield fellows to ride them, to get on them. They were nervous. Only one of them, Harry Studer, had delivered groceries for his father's grocery store in Massillon, Ohio, on horseback. The other 3 weren't familiar with horses at all. Could you imagine their fear of getting tossed by this horse and having their season end with an injury? Rockney wasn't real pleased. He didn't know what was going on. What's going on my practice field? Well, you better make it quick. So commercial photographer Harry Elmore snapped at most 2 or 3 images. I mean, think of a photographer today. Think of you with your phone today. You know, we're taking 20 pictures of the same thing. 2 or 3 images at most, and of course it becomes famous, largely because of George Strickler's work to get it placed in newspapers across the country. Meanwhile, the schedule goes on. They beat Princeton. 2 weeks after the Army game, and of note in our location here, they host Georgia Tech, the biggest game ever at Notre Dame up to that time. Again, they could not get the big name schools to come. There was none bigger than Georgia Tech. The power of the South, John Heisman had coached them just a couple years earlier. Huge Notre Dame victory. They take the student trip to Wisconsin and have a big victory there with home state star Jimmy Crowley scoring a couple of touchdowns. So the season goes on. They host Nebraska 2 weeks after Georgia Tech, and that becomes the biggest game ever in Notre Dame home history because they got Nebraska to come to Cartier Field. And they laid a whooping on them. Now the national headlines are just going crazy. Rockney's Wonder Team, and this famous photo, makes it into newspapers one by one across the country, while young George Strickler, a very enterprising young fellow, is selling copies of it for $1 a piece. In 1924, he's getting $1 a piece from his Notre Dame classmates for this picture. But of course, it's largely the publication in newspapers around the country that just make it iconic. But again, if the team had lost the game anywhere along the line, they just would have been a backfield with a colorful nickname, I guess. It took what they did on the field to truly make this a memorable and legendary thing. They have a game scheduled with Northwestern at Northwestern's home field in Evanston that has changed just about 10 days before. the venue change to the brand new, not yet completed, they're still nailing down seats at the Grant Park Stadium, and it becomes the first major sports event played at what we today call Soldier Field. By the way, all the details are in the book in great detail. I just got to tell you one, since we're such a predominantly Notre Dame crowd here. The talk of playing in the Rose Bowl kind of percolates throughout the season. And the expected, anticipated rival opponent in that game is going to be USC. Well, partly during the season, there comes to be this huge argument. And you have Stanford and Cal on one side accusing USC of using ineligible players. Imagine that. Even back then. The week of their game, Stanford says, we're not playing yet. The week of the game, Stanford says, we're not playing. Stanford quickly scrambles to bring in University of Utah, score an easy victory. USC scrambles to bring in tiny St. Mary's College from the Bay Area, coached by former Rockney player Slip Madigan, and darn if St. Mary's doesn't upset USC, knocking them out of Rose Bowl contention. So that's how Notre Dame ends up playing Stanford in the Rose Bowl. The All-American teams or All-West teams of the year include Walsh at center, Stuhldreher at quarterback, Crowley at halfback, and Layden at fullback. Don Miller, the only reason Don Miller's not on that team is because a fellow from the University of Illinois by the name of Red Grange, who had a fairly good year. So here they are taking off from the train station in Chicago for this epic trip to the Rose Bowl. They didn't go in one route. They made it a national odyssey through Memphis, New Orleans, Houston, Tucson, and finally Pasadena. And they came back via San Francisco, Denver, Salt Lake City, Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Lincoln, Nebraska. It was a trip for the ages, and at every stop, the team was feted by local Notre Dame alums, the local clergy, businessmen, and truly cemented their idea as being a national team. Again, the game itself was against Stanford. Here's the entire team at Pasadena on January 1st, 1925. The opponent was the great Stanford team led by halfback Ernie Nevers and legendary coach Pop Warner. And in the game in which Ernie Nevers outgained the entire Four Horsemen backfield, Notre Dame prevails 27-10 thanks to three non-offense touchdowns, a block punt run in for a score, and two Elmer Layden interception returns. After the game, the reporters came to Jim Crowley and they said, well, what do you think of this? Your whole backfield got outgained by one fella, Ernie Nevers. And Crowley thought a minute and he replied, well, yeah. And next year, the American League pennant is going to go to the team with the most left on base. Pretty good comeback. But it was a hugely important and influential game. It was broadcast by what was called repeater stations that broadcast the radio coverage all the way back to the Eastern time zone. So it was huge in that way as well. And this team secured its spot as Notre Dame's first consensus national champion. Anybody have a question at this point? Any questions at all about this team, this season, this year?
Who's the gentleman with the C on his